Today we're going to take a look at vocabulary instruction and assessment. Hold on just a minute. Okay, so first we need to take a look at vocabulary, and I want to share with you a quote that I found. It says that vocabulary teaching or having a large, rich vocabulary is probably one of the most important things that a teacher can give to a student, because when they know how to use those words and they have that vocabulary, they can use it far beyond school. They can use it in life in general. So that's really important to know about vocabulary. Let's take a look at what vocabulary is. Vocabulary consists of words that we understand when we hear them or read them, and words that we speak or write. So receptive vocabulary is vocabulary that we hear or that we read, and expressive vocabulary is vocabulary that we write or that we speak. So think of it as expressive. You're expressing your emotions or what you think whenever you speak or you write it down. But then when you read it or you hear somebody say something, you're receiving that. So you're receptive of what's been given to you or what you've heard. Something that's really important to know is that most children begin first grade with a spoken vocabulary of 6,000 words, and every year after that they need to build on 3,000 words more. So it's our job to teach them this vocabulary and build their vocabulary up so that they're where they need to be when they get to the third grade and beyond. Each word doesn't have the same importance when you consider what they mean and when you use them, so the way that you can look at which words are the most important to teach or that it's important for a student to know. You can look at them in 3 types or levels, and those are called tiers. So there's 3 tiers. There's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. We'll look at it right here. Sorry about that. It won't let me show you guys from the presentation view and do the screen recording, so we'll do it this way. But tier 1 is just basic words, everyday words that you would use in everyday type of conversation. Words like sight words, nouns, adjective, verbs, early reading words that kids use when they begin to read, that they pick up really quick, that they don't really need to learn that word or what it means. They just know, they've heard it over and over, they've seen it used, they've heard it used, so they already know that word. These words don't really require direct instruction, so you don't have to take a lot of time to sit down and go over, okay, this is the word cat. This is what a cat is. That's just a word that they recognize. They've seen a cat. They know what a cat is. They don't need you to teach them. This is cat. Or like a verb, run, for example, on here. That's a simple word. Most kids know what run is. You don't have to sit down and say, okay, this is the word run. This is what run means. Then we move on to tier 2 words, and those are more sophisticated words. They're high frequency words. They're used a lot. They have multiple meanings most of the time. These words are really important for reading comprehension and for description. You can use these words to give detailed descriptions and to speak at a higher level, a more formal level, rather than the basic bottom level of speaking or writing. These words are best for direct instruction. These words indicate student progress in the school and throughout their school learning. So rage, a kid isn't generally going to know automatically what rage is, so that would be a good word to use. Or stumbled, you can use these words in conjunction with tier 1 words like we see here, like sprinted and run, stumbled and fell. They mean similar things, but it's a more sophisticated, more complex word to work with. And then you move to your tier 3 words, and these are content words, words that are low frequency. They're not used a whole lot in everyday speech, but they're content specific. So maybe a social studies term or a science term, something pertaining to weather, or like a job specific term, things like that. Like, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Let's see, one for like technology, maybe like a hard drive or something. You wouldn't use that in everyday speak, but you would need to know it if you're talking about a computer, or if that's the vocabulary set that you're using right then, you would need to know what that means. And like these, foreshadow, monarchy. Monarchy you wouldn't really use in everyday conversation unless you're talking about government and types of government and things like that. So then you would move down to different ways that you can teach this, and it's important to know that while reading does increase a student's vocabulary and it teaches them different words and they can pick up on different words, it's really important that teachers realize that direct instruction and explicit vocabulary instruction has to occur every single day in the classroom. So from my own experience, I was taught vocabulary by Monday you're given a list of terms, you define those for homework, we talk about them tomorrow, and then you're on your own, you memorize those terms however you feel best, and Friday you come in, you're given the list of words, and you write out the definitions, you turn it in, and your grade is based on how well you recalled those definitions. I actually found in my research that that's not the best way to teach vocabulary instruction. In fact, it's probably one of the worst ways because it doesn't lead to a true understanding of the meaning of the word. It leads to a memorization for Friday's test, and then most students, if they came in on Monday and were given a pop quiz, they probably would not pass. They may remember a few definitions, but generally by the time I remember getting out of class on Friday, that afternoon when I got out of school, I probably couldn't tell you the definition because I had memorized them, I spilled it out on the test, and then I left. And I knew that I'd done well, and then I didn't need to remember the word-by-word definition. I could have pulled some of the words or described it a little bit, but I couldn't have given you a clear definition. So some good strategies that I found for vocabulary instruction all had to do with using context clues to determine the word meaning, and I found that most research suggested that that's the best way for students to truly remember a vocabulary meaning is if they're given a word that they don't understand, and then they have to use the text around that word to figure out on their own what that word means. So I found several different ways to encourage students to use context clues and to teach them methods of using context clues. One I think would work generally throughout, maybe third grade and up throughout all school. And then one I found that I think would work better in lower grades. This one is the PAVE procedure, P-A-V-E, and each letter of PAVE represents a step in the procedure. So for P, predict, you come across a word that you don't know, you're going to use the context around it, that sentence, maybe the paragraph or the page, to predict what you think that word means. Then you're going to associate it with a mental image, so you're going to get a picture in your mind of that word and kind of what you think it means. And then you will verify with a dictionary what the word really means. So you'll get a dictionary out or you'll look it up online and see, okay, this is what that word really means. And then you're going to go back to E and you're going to evaluate your prediction. So based on what the real definition is, was my prediction right? Was it wrong? Why? Like, what can I do next time? Where do I see that this fits into that sentence at? And then you'll go on with your reading to make sense of it. May want to start back over at that sentence and keep going, but then you'll have a better idea. And this is just an example that I found. So the sentence is, if alligators are aggravated, they will either grumble or roar. So the student didn't know what the word aggravated meant, so they filled that in. So their predicted definition, they looked at that sentence, they thought about it, and they said, well, if they're aggravated and they're going to grumble or roar, they may be angry. So they wrote that as their predicted definition. Then for their association, the mental image that they had is a dinosaur looking pretty mad. So they did that. That's the mental image they have in their mind. And when children associate a mental image and a word, it tends to stick better if you have that picture in your mind that you can always go back to. So a good sentence that they could write that used that word was, I got very aggravated with my parents sometimes. So this child that has completed this has a sense of the word aggravated, but they may not know for sure what the word means. So they looked it up to verify the definition, and the true definition is to be exasperated or provoked to anger. So if they go back and evaluate their prediction, they're going to say, I thought it was angry. This definition says to be exasperated, provoked, or to anger. So I was right, and then they can keep on with their reading. If they weren't right, they can think about why they might not have been right or what clues they missed in reading. This is just a really cool way to practice the method, and after students have practiced the method multiple times and they've been successful in using context clues to determine the definition of the word. They more than likely won't have to verify with a dictionary and evaluate their prediction anymore, but they'll feel confident in being able to use the context clues to find meaning in a word. And the next one that I found, I think this one's the one that would be most beneficial for lower grades, and it is called Word Detective. So students would be given a list or a set of words at the beginning of the reading period or time that you've allotted for reading, and they will search for those words as they read, or as you read aloud, or as they read in their partners. And when they come across words on the list, they'll write down the sentence that the word is in, underline the word, and they'll put it on a sticky note and just stick it on their desk. They'll keep reading, and when they get to the end of the paragraph that you've assigned or the page that you've assigned, they can go back with their partner individually, with the whole class, in smaller groups, and they can discuss what they think that word meant in the context of the sentence that it's been given in. So they'll be able to talk, bounce ideas off of each other, and that way, like, they've used the context clues to make their own decision, but then they have the ideas of others to see, well, I thought that aggravated meant angry, but he thought aggravated meant this, so who's right? But then they could also use it where I thought aggravated meant angry, and they also thought aggravated meant angry, and I see that my other friend over here thought that aggravated meant angry, so then they'll be able to judge, like, okay, I thought this, someone else also thought this, are we right? Kind of that kind of idea of working together collaboratively to come towards a definition, but also using the context clues. So I found that vocabulary can be difficult to assess if you do not do it in the way that I've been assessed or taught, where you memorize the term, regurgitate it for a test on Friday, and then you're done with it. I found a couple strategies that I think would be beneficial in assessing student vocabulary knowledge. There's two different forms that I found that I'm really going to talk about, and then one that I thought of that I think would be beneficial. But these are some that I researched, and one I think would be best for the lower grades. As I said before, this one is categorizing vocabulary, and then another one is pre-reading and post-reading word evaluation, and this I think would be probably good from 3rd grade up again, maybe introducing the idea in 2nd grade. So this is an example of the categorizing. So in this one, students would be given a word bank, and there's different categories, and they'd have to fit each word into a category. So for instance, on this one, the categories are furniture, colors, weather, and foods. And then let's take the word bed, for example. You'd have to figure out which category it fits in. So for students in this level, they would have to have a basic understanding of the words in the word bank and know which category they fit into to accurately categorize the words. They need a basic understanding of the meaning of the word as well. This assessment could be used to determine words that students may need more direct instruction on, but it could also, you could change it up and make it more difficult, like the categories could be more concise and words could be more of the Tier 2 and Tier 3 words. This assessment is a pre-reading and post-reading assessment. Let's see. For this one, when the pre-reading assessment, students would be given a list of words that are going to appear and what they're going to read. They would categorize those words or rank them 1 through 4, 1 being they've never seen the word before, 2 they've seen it but they don't know the word, 3 they know something about the word and then they would share what they think the word means, and 4 they know this word well and they can use it in a sentence. By using the word in a sentence, they demonstrate their understanding of the word, and you can check back and see, like, did they truly understand this word? The pre-assessment would be a great tool for teachers to use as like a check mark to go back and see what the students learned, to see if they really did know what the word meant before they read, and to see how well they did on improving to the end. And then the post-assessment, they would then define the terms after they've read. They'll do their reading. They'll use the context clues to make their own definition in their own words what they think the terms mean. So that's just another way for them to go back and to prove what they've learned. And I mean, again, it would be based on context clues, and it would be a good way for the teacher to gauge use of context clues and their understanding of the vocabulary in the text. Then it could push you towards more direct instruction if you could see that majority of the students didn't get certain terms, or there's a certain student that's struggling in a particular area or a couple of words. And then this is the one that I thought of, like the SAT style, where you're given a sentence or a paragraph with a specific term underlined, and then you would either define the term in your own words, or you would choose the best meaning from multiple choice selections. So this is just an example. She was able to deflect the conversation with a simple hand gesture, and the term is deflect. So students would then be tasked with defining in their own terms what the word deflect means based on the sentence that they're given. So they would just work through that, and you could look over and see how they did. And this is just a recap of all that we've talked about. So vocabulary is words and their meanings. Vocabulary is used in written and spoken communication. There are 3 types or levels of vocabulary. Tier 1, your basic vocabulary used in everyday language, your simple words. Then Tier 2, your high-frequency words with multiple meanings. They're used to describe detail. They're good for reading comprehension, the best words to use when you're doing direct instruction. And your Tier 3 words, which are low-frequency words, they're not used a whole lot. They're content-specific. Think your social studies and science terms. When you're teaching vocabulary, the best methods to use are methods that require students to discover the meaning for themselves rather than memorize or look up a definition. So that requires them to use context clues in the text around the word that they've been given. And then when you're assessing students, requiring them to use context clues and then to justify or evaluate the predicted meaning of the word, to then check themselves to see if they were correct and that they have a good understanding of the word.